Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, it's easy and fast.
You're still my first choice, Sarah said, applying mascara in the bathroom mirror without even looking at me. Still, as if I should have been grateful for that designation. We'd been arguing about priorities again. I had asked her to skip girls' night tonight because my brother was visiting from Lyon and I thought it would be nice to have dinner together as a family. Her response, a laugh that could freeze hell, was followed by that devastating declaration that had just redefined our entire marriage. In 4 words, I stood there watching her get ready. This woman I had been married to for 6 years, and I suddenly felt like I was looking at a stranger. The red dress she was putting on was not one I recognized. The perfume she used to wear when she was with me. Even her makeup seemed more intentional tonight. First choice, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. That's an interesting way to put it. She finally turned to look at me, irritation shining in her eyes. Don't start your jealous husband routine tonight. Mark, I'm going out with the girls, not running away to the Cape Desert. I didn't say anything about being jealous. I'm just curious about this ranking system you apparently have for the people in your life. She rolled her eyes and grabbed her purse from the dresser. You know what I meant. Don't overthink it. But I didn't know what she meant. That was the problem. In her mind, I was still her first choice, which implied she'd been weighing other options. The fact that she felt the need to use the word still meant those options were very much active and being considered. So, what happens when I'm no longer your first choice? I asked, my voice quiet but direct. Do I get a notification, or do I just find out when you don't come home one night? She stopped with her hand on the bedroom doorknob. For a moment, I thought she might actually address the seriousness of what I had just said. Instead, she gave me that condescending smile I had been seeing more often lately. You're being dramatic. I'm meeting the girls at that new wine bar in Saint Germain. I'll be home by midnight. The girls, I said, watching her face intently. Would those be the same girls who've been divorced twice and spend their weekends on dating apps? Her jaw tightened. My friend's marital status is not your problem, right? Because spending every Friday night with women who treat marriage like a streaming service they can cancel whenever they want couldn't possibly influence your perspective on commitment. She opened the door but turned back one more time. You used to be fun. You used to trust me. Now you sound like my father. And with that parting shot, she was gone. I heard her heels echoing down the hallway, the jingle of her keys, and then the sound of the front door closing behind her. The house fell silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Paris traffic. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the empty doorway. 6 years of marriage, and I had just been demoted to first choice status. Not the love of her life, not her partner, not even her priority. Just her current best choice among seemingly several alternatives. The worst part wasn't even the words themselves. It was the ease with which they left her mouth. As if she had been thinking them for a while. This wasn't a slip-up or something said in anger. This was her honest assessment of my position in her life. I went into the bathroom and looked in the same mirror where she had been doing her makeup just minutes before. When had I become someone who could be so casually discarded? When had I started accepting being treated as a plan B in my own marriage? My phone vibrated with a message from my brother asking what time we were meeting for dinner. I looked at the message, realizing I was about to tell him that his sister-in-law's girls' night had taken priority over him. Family time. Again, but as I started to type a reply, a different feeling began to grow in my chest. Not the familiar resignation I had been carrying lately, but something sharper, something that felt suspiciously like a long-dormant sense of self-worth awakening. I deleted the apologetic message I was about to send to my brother and typed something else. Change of plans. Let's make it a brother's night. I've got some things to think about. If I was only her first choice, then maybe it was time she learned what it felt like to be mine. And right now, my first choice was to find out exactly what game she thought she was playing, and if I wanted to keep playing it. The night was young, and I had a feeling it was about to get very interesting. My brother and I ended up at a brasserie, which felt appropriate since my marriage apparently had all the substance of a bar snack. Between sips of wine and bites of cheese, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. Talking honestly about my relationship. She said you're her first choice, he asked, almost choking on his drink. Dude, that's like saying you're her favorite plan B. Yeah. Well, that's apparently where I rank these days. But even as we talked, part of my mind was working on something else. Call it curiosity or call it self-preservation. But I needed to understand what was really happening during these girls' nights. They had become a weekly ritual over the last few months, always with the same vague explanation about needing space to distress. After dropping my brother off at his hotel in La Marais, I decided to do a basic reconnaissance. Not because I was paranoid, but because when someone tells you that you're their first choice, it implies that they are actively evaluating other options. The new wine bar she mentioned was easy enough to find. Le Cep d'Or, in the heart of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. I drove by around 10:30, just out of curiosity. Her van was parked outside, along with 2 other vehicles I recognized from her group of friends. But there were also several cars I didn't recognize, and through the large windows, I could see it wasn't exactly the quiet girls' night she described. The place was packed. A mixed crowd. Definitely not just a few wives sitting around complaining about their husbands over a glass of wine. I didn't go in. That wasn't my style. And frankly, I didn't need to see whatever was happening inside. But I did notice something interesting. She told me she'd be home by midnight. At 11:45, I was sitting in my car watching her laugh and flirt with a guy in an expensive suit while her friends cheered her on from their high-top table. I drove home and did something I probably should have done months ago. I opened her laptop. Now, before anyone starts their lecture in defense of privacy, let me be clear. She uses my Netflix account, my Amazon Prime, my Spotify, and half of her expenses come out of my bank account. If she wanted privacy, she could start by paying for her own subscriptions. Her Instagram told an interesting story. Photos from previous girls' nights showed a pattern I had somehow missed. The same group of women, but always with different guys in the background. Always at bars or clubs that were definitely not advertised as places for married women to have innocent conversations about life. But the real revelation was her WhatsApp messages with her friend who was going through her second divorce. Screenshots of conversations dating back weeks. All revolving around how marriage is just a piece of paper and how you don't know what you're missing until you get back out there. One message thread from last weekend sent my blood pressure soaring. He actually asked me to skip tonight to have dinner with his boring brother. Are you serious? I'm 28, not 88. I didn't get married to be a housewife. Fiona, I love him, but sometimes I wonder if I settled too young. There are so many successful guys in these places who really know how to have fun. And then the kicker sent just 3 hours ago. Tonight feels different. I'm really excited to see if he shows up. Wish me luck. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room. The pieces clicked into place with an uncomfortable clarity. This wasn't about needing space, girls' time. This was about her testing the waters while keeping me as her safety net. The front door opened at 1:23 a.m. She tried to be quiet, but her heels on the hardwood floor announced her arrival. I heard her stop in the entryway, likely surprised to see the living room light on. "You're still awake," she said. Appearing in the doorway, her makeup was smudged, her hair a bit disheveled, and she had that guilty look people get when they're caught doing something they know they shouldn't. "Couldn't sleep," I said, my voice neutral. "How was your girls' night?" "Fine, it was fine. We just talked and had a few drinks." She was avoiding eye contact, which was interesting. At LA Sep door, she froze. "How did you know where we went?" "You told me. Remember, the new wine bar in Saint Germain, Des Prez?" I hadn't told her I'd driven by. But her reaction told me everything I needed to know about her comfort level with her story. "Oh, yeah, it was good. Quiet, quiet," I repeated. "That's surprising. It looked pretty busy when I drove by earlier." The color drained from her face. "You drove by? Why would you do that?" "I was dropping my brother off at his hotel. It was on the way." I stood up and walked toward her. "But I'm curious about something. You said you'd be home by midnight. It's almost 1:30. We lost track of time. You know how it is when you're having fun." "Having fun," I said, letting the word hang between us. "With the girls?" "Yes, with the girls," but her voice had that defensive tone that guilty people adopt when they're clinging to a story they know won't hold up. I nodded slowly. "Well, I'm glad you had fun. I had an interesting night, too. I read a bit, caught up on some things I've been meaning to do." She was watching me carefully now, probably trying to figure out how much I knew. The smart play would have been to push her right then, but I had learned something important tonight. She was lying to me, but she was also careless, which meant if I gave her enough rope, she would probably hang herself without my help. "I'm going to bed," she announced, clearly wanting to escape this conversation. "Good idea. You look tired." I smiled at her, but it wasn't the warm smile she was used to. It was the kind of smile that lets someone know you're thinking things you're not saying yet. As she walked up the stairs, I made a mental note to have another conversation with her friend's ex. If I remembered correctly, he discovered his wife's girls' nights were actually auditions for his replacement. It's funny how patterns repeat themselves. Even funnier how predictable people become when they think they're being clever. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. Saturday morning arrived with that artificial cheerfulness that guilty people use to overcompensate. She made me a croque-monsieur, something she hadn't done in months, and she kept asking if I wanted more coffee with the kind of enthusiasm typically reserved for television presenters. "You seem to be in a good mood," I observed, watching her bustle around the kitchen like she was auditioning for Wife of the Year. "Just happy it's the weekend. We should do something fun today. Maybe go to that Marche des Enfants Rouges you like." Interesting. Yesterday, I was boring enough that she couldn't sacrifice one night to have dinner with family. Today she wanted to spend quality time looking at crafts. The transformation was almost impressive in its transparency. "Actually, I was thinking we should talk about last night." Her smile wavered for a second before snapping back into place. "About what?" "I told you we just had some drinks and caught up." I pulled out my phone and opened the photo I had taken of her van parked outside Le Sep door at 11:45. Then I showed her "This is your van, right? The one that was supposed to leave at midnight so you could be home on time." She stared at the photo, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and calculation before settling on indignation. You followed me. Are you serious? I didn't follow you. I told you I was taking my brother to his hotel. But since we're talking about following people, let's talk about your friend's dating adventures. What are you talking about? I opened her laptop that she had conveniently left on the kitchen counter and showed her the WhatsApp conversation I had captured the night before. Her face went white as she read her own words. I love him, but sometimes I wonder if I settled too young. There are so many successful guys in these places who really know how to have fun. I looked at her. Your words, not mine. You went through my messages. The defensive anger flared up right on cue. I went through our shared laptop that I pay for, looking at messages sent with the phone plan that I pay for about nights out that you fund with the credit card that I pay. Before I closed the laptop and leaned against the counter. But sure, let's talk about privacy violations. She opened her mouth to reply, then closed it, probably realizing that playing the victim card wasn't going to work when I had real proof. Those messages don't mean anything. I was just venting to a friend. Venting, I repeated. Is that what we call it when you tell someone you're excited to see if a specific guy shows up to meet you? Her face flushed. It's not what you think. Seriously. Then explain to me what I should think when my wife tells me I'm her first choice, then spends the night flirting with other men, while sending messages about how she might have settled too young. I wasn't flirting with anyone. I pulled out my phone again and showed her another photo. This one I had taken through the bar window, showing her laughing and touching the arm of the man in the expensive suit. Technology is amazing these days. Phone cameras can capture moments from quite a distance. All the fight went out of her at once. She slumped against the kitchen island, looking like someone who just realized they've been called on a bluff. It's not what it looks like, she said in a small voice. Then tell me what it is, I said, because from where I'm standing it looks like you're looking for my replacement, while keeping me as your fallback plan. She was silent for a long moment, looking at her hands. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but I noticed they were more tears of frustration than of guilt. I just wanted to feel attractive, desired again. Do you know how long it's been since you looked at me the way those men do? So this is my fault, I said, not as a question, but as a realization of the direction this conversation was going. That's not what I'm saying. It's actually exactly what you're saying. You're telling me that because I don't fawn over you every day. You've decided to seek validation from strangers in bars. You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage. I laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Invisible. You want to talk about invisible? When was the last time you asked me about my day without looking at your phone? When was the last time you initiated a conversation that wasn't about something you wanted or needed? When was the last time you treated me as anything more than the guy who pays the bills and fixes things around the house? She had no answer for that, which was an answer in itself. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. My voice was calm, but absolutely firm. You're going to stop treating our marriage like it's optional. You're going to stop going to clubs to collect phone numbers and ego boosts, and you're going to decide if you want to be married to me or if you want to be single and get back out there. You can't just give me ultimatums. I'm not giving you an ultimatum. I'm telling you that I'm done being your first choice while you keep other options open. You want to feel desired, then desire the man you married, or set him free to find someone who does. She dabbed at her eyes, but I could see the anger growing behind the tears. So that's it. After 6 years, you're going to throw our marriage away over some harmless flirting. I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that when you decided I was disposable enough to risk losing me for a little attention from strangers. I stood up and grabbed my keys from the counter. You have until I get back from the gym to decide what you want. But understand this. The next conversation we have about your girls' nights is going to be very different. Where are you going? To the gym. I apparently need to make sure I'm still attractive enough to compete with random guys at wine bars. I headed for the door, but turned back one more time. Oh, and darling, the next time you want to lie to me about where you're going or what you're doing, maybe delete the proof from the devices I pay for first. The look on her face told me she was finally starting to understand that the man who used to accept her excuses and believe her stories was gone from the building. What she didn't know yet was that he wasn't coming back. The real conversation had just begun. I was at the gym for 2 hours lifting weights and clearing my head. When I walked back into the house, it smelled like something was cooking. She was in the kitchen in the dress I had bought her for our anniversary last year. The one she said was too fancy for everyday wear. I made your favorite dish, she announced, gesturing to what looked like an elaborate banquet. That boeuf bourguignon you always order. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the defensive woman I had left, replaced by someone who looked like she had walked out of a couples therapy manual titled, How to Get Your Husband Back in 3 Simple Steps. How convenient, I said, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. I've been thinking about what you said. You're right. I haven't been the wife you deserve. I sat down at the kitchen table and watched her bustle around, serving the food with the kind of attention to detail she normally reserved for her Instagram photos. And what exactly have you concluded from all this thinking? That I've been selfish, that I've taken you for granted. She sat across from me, reaching for my hand. I want to fix this. Fix us. By making dinner. By being honest, ... double quotes. She took a deep breath as if bracing for a performance. Yes, I've been enjoying the attention from other men, but it never amounted to anything. It was just fantasy. Like watching a soap opera, I pulled my hand away and started eating. Fantasy. That's one way to describe emotional infidelity. It wasn't infidelity. I never did anything physical, right? You just told your divorced friend you were excited to see if a specific guy showed up to meet you. Totally innocent fantasy. Her composure cracked slightly. How do you even know that? Because you're not as careful as you think you are, and because when someone tells me I'm their first choice, I tend to investigate what the other options might be. She was silent for a moment, regrouping. When she spoke again, her voice had adopted that hurt tone she used to deploy when she needed to turn the tables. I can't believe you're punishing me for being human, for having moments of doubt in a 6-year marriage. Everyone has those thoughts, don't they? I've been married to you for 6 years, and not once have I told you that you're my first choice while secretly looking for upgrades. That's because you're a man. For women, it's different. We need to feel desired, appreciated. When was the last time you brought me flowers? Just because. When was the last time you planned a surprise date? And there it was, the twist I had been expecting. Somehow, her emotional affair was now my fault for not being romantic enough. So let me get this straight, I said, putting my fork down. You've been lying to me about where you're going and who you're with. Why? Because I don't buy you enough flowers. You're twisting what I'm saying. No, I'm clarifying what you're saying. You're telling me that your behavior is justified because I have failed as a husband. I'm saying relationships require effort from both sides. I laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. Effort, like the effort I put in working 50 hours a week to pay for this house, your van, your girls' nights, and everything else you consider essential to your happiness. That kind of effort. Money isn't everything. You're right, it's not. But it's pretty convenient that you only remember that when you're trying to justify treating me like trash. Her mask was slipping. The act of the contrite wife was giving way to something uglier underneath. I have never treated you like trash. I made one comment about you being my first choice, and you've turned it into this massive betrayal. One comment, right? Let's ignore the months of secret meetings with men, the lies about where you've been, and the messages about having settled too young. They were private conversations about our marriage with someone who is actively encouraging you to tear your life apart, just like she did with hers. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Maybe she's right. Maybe I did settle too young. Maybe I never had a chance to figure out what I really wanted. There it is, I said in a low voice. The truth finally comes out. What truth? That this isn't about me not buying you flowers or not planning surprise dates. It's about you wanting to be single while keeping all the benefits of being married. Her face flushed. That's not true, isn't it? You want the security of having a husband who pays the bills and fixes the sink. But you also want the thrill of flirting with strangers and feeling like you're 19 again. You don't understand what it's like to wonder if you've missed out on life, and you don't understand what it's like to work yourself to death every day for someone who considers you disposable. We stared at each other across the kitchen table, the elegant dinner cooling between us. This was the moment of truth, and we both knew it. So what do you want me to do? She asked, but her tone suggested she was asking out of frustration, not a genuine interest in saving our marriage. I want you to decide. Either you want to be married to me or you want to be single and see what else is out there. But you can't have both. And if I choose you, what? I'll never get to go out with my friends again. I'll become a prisoner in my own marriage. If you choose me, you stop lying. You stop seeking validation from other men. You stop treating our marriage like it's negotiable. I stood up and walked toward the door. But honestly, based on this conversation, I'm not sure that's what you really want. What's that supposed to mean? I turned back to face her. It means that someone who truly wanted to save their marriage wouldn't spend the whole conversation justifying why they needed to look for alternatives. You're being impossible. No, I'm being clear. Maybe for the first time in this entire relationship, I headed for the stairs. Let me know when you've made your decision. But understand that I'm making mine, too. What decision? Whether I want to stay married to someone who thinks I'm lucky to be her first choice. I left her standing in the kitchen with her untouched dinner and her wounded pride. Upstairs, I could hear her moving around, probably texting her friend about what an unreasonable monster I was being. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally seeing our relationship with clarity, and what I saw wasn't pretty. The question now was whether she would see it too, or if she would cling to her victim narrative until there was nothing left to save. Sunday morning arrived with the sound of her phone vibrating nonstop. I could hear her whispering urgently in the bathroom, probably getting advice from her divorced friend on how to handle her controlling husband. When she finally came out, she had that look people get when they've convinced themselves they're the victim in a situation they created. We need to talk, she announced as if she were calling a board meeting. I'm listening. I've decided that if you can't handle me having a social life, then maybe we need to take a break. I almost smiled. After all that had happened, she was trying to make this her decision. A break, yes, to separate and figure out what we both really want. Interesting. And where exactly do you plan on taking this break? At your friend's house, or maybe at that wine bar where you've been doing your research? Her confidence wavered slightly. I have options. I'm sure you do. But before you commit to anything permanent, there's something you should know. I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up a folder I had placed there that morning. Her eyes followed my movement with growing uncertainty. On Friday afternoon, while you were getting ready for your girls' night, I had a very productive conversation with someone. What kind of conversation? The kind you have with a family lawyer when you realize your marriage might be coming to an end. The color drained from her face. You contacted a lawyer. I contacted the best lawyer in the city. Turns out he's handled several no-fault divorce cases with social media evidence and emotional infidelity. A very thorough guy. I opened the folder and took out several printed pages. These are screenshots of all your messages, Instagram posts, and social media activity from the last 3 months. It's incredible the pattern that emerges when you put it all in chronological order. She tried to grab the papers, but I pulled them away. Don't worry, you'll get copies. But first, let me show you some highlights. I turned to a page covered in printed messages. Here's where you tell your friend that marriage is just a piece of paper. Here's where you discuss strategies for meeting men in bars. And this is my favorite, where you rate the guys you've met on a scale of 1 to 10. There were private conversations. Private conversations about our marriage, which as far as I know, involves me. I flipped to another page. But it gets better. Did you know your friend's ex-husband kept detailed records of her extracurricular activities? Turns out, judges are very interested in patterns of behavior when it comes to the division of marital property. Apparently, when someone shows a pattern of looking for romantic alternatives while married, it can be considered a breach of marital duties, which, while it doesn't affect the dissolution, can influence a judge's decisions on certain assets. I closed the folder. Fascinating stuff. Really, you're trying to scare me. I'm trying to educate you. You see, while you were playing games and keeping your options open, I was doing something more productive. I was preparing for the possibility that you might choose those options over our marriage. I went to the kitchen table and sat down, gesturing for her to do the same. She remained standing, probably because sitting would feel too much like accepting a position of weakness. Here's what I learned the most. I continued. Our house is under a community property regime, but I've made every mortgage payment for the last 4 years. Your van is financed in my name. Your major medical insurance comes from my job. Your gym membership, your cell phone plan, your credit cards, all connected to my income. What are you saying? I'm saying that while you've been treating me like your backup plan, maybe you should consider what your life would be like without me as your primary financial plan. She finally sat down, her face pale. You're threatening me. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm presenting facts. You want to take a break? Fine, but that works both ways. That means no more joint bank account, no more credit cards I pay for, no more health insurance, no more house that I maintain and pay the mortgage on. You can't just cut off my financial support. Act like I can. We don't have children. And according to my lawyer, separating finances during a de facto separation is not only legal but recommended. I took out another set of papers. I've already opened a new bank account. As of tomorrow, my paycheck goes there. I've also contacted the insurance company to start the process of canceling your policy next month. This is insane. You're tearing our whole life apart over some messages. No? You tore our life apart when you decided I wasn't enough for you. I'm just responding appropriately to your decision. She was silent for a long moment, looking at the papers scattered across the table. When she looked up, there was something different in her eyes. Not anger or defiance, but calculation. What if I said I'm sorry? What if I promised to stop going out with the girls? Then I would say you're missing the point entirely. What point? The point is that you've shown me who you really are. Someone who lies, who seeks validation from strangers, who treats their marriage as if it's optional. Promising to behave better doesn't change the fundamental problem. What is it? What? That you don't respect me. You don't value what we built together. And when things got a little routine, instead of working to improve our relationship, you started looking for my replacement. Now she was crying. But they weren't the manipulative tears from yesterday. They seemed like genuine panic. I never wanted any of this to happen. Maybe not, but it did. And now we both have to live with the consequences of your choices. I stood up and gathered the papers. You said you wanted a break to figure out what you really want. Consider this your opportunity. You can have all the freedom you've been craving. Go out with whoever you want. Flirt with whoever you want. Live the life you think you're missing, but without any of the benefits of being married to me. Exactly. Welcome back to single life. I hope it's everything you dreamed of. I headed for the stairs, but her voice stopped me. What if I don't want a break? What if I want to work on us? I turned to look at her. Then you'll have to prove it. Not with words, or promises, or fancy dinners. With actions. Real, sustained, and verifiable changes in behavior. And if she did that, if she became the woman I married again, I didn't know, But for some reason, it seemed like a much less risky bet than the one she was making, and for the first time in a long time, I felt alive and curious about what the future held for us.
Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, it's easy and fast.